This is regarding a notice of trespass and ban. I worked as an Amazon Whole Foods shopper from July 28, 2019 to August 7, 2022. As an Amazon employee, I spent thousands of hours working at the Whole Foods Brooklyn location. And I met, interacted with, and got along with hundreds of people with zero complaints. And the great thing about working at a Whole Foods location is that if there were ever any type of problems, the Whole Foods higher-ups at the location would have to acknowledge it. They would have to resolve it with the employees involved immediately. No ifs, ands, or buts, it would have to be handled right then and there and documented. So keep that in mind. I spent thousands of hours in there with zero issues. If there was ever any type of issues, leadership would have confronted me immediately. And not only that, but I would have to answer to those complaints. I would have to be involved and give answers. And reading that now, that's a beautiful concept. So due to the Amazon Whole Foods shopper transition, in which I chose to stay with Amazon, my position working at the Whole Foods Brooklyn location ended on August 7, 2022. Those who chose to stay were converted into Whole Foods employees. So, if my position there ended and I no longer worked at any Whole Foods location, how could there be any problems? I live a 5-minute walk away from the Whole Foods Brooklyn location. It's the closest market to my house, and significantly cheaper for me to shop there, especially with my Amazon Prime membership. This ban has cost me a lot of money. In fact, before the transition I was by far more of a customer than an employee, averaging around 1 4-hour shift per week. So after the position ended on August 7, 2022, there was no real change for me at all. It was just a continuation of my regular routine of buying foodstuff every 3 or 4 days. After I left the position on August 7, until 19 days later when the allegations started, I shopped for groceries a handful of times, for a combined total of around 1 hour. And during this 19-day timeline, I only had conversations with 2 people on the sales floor. Olivia from Whole Body, who is the Whole Foods employee that I get along the best with, and 1 conversation with Amelia, who unknown to them, not only works for Whole Foods, but also works for Amazon. That's a total of 2 people. Just 2 people. So keep that in mind. That's 2 people total that I had conversations with on the sales floor. Note, I asked Zayla, the Whole Body supervisor, about the availability of the Neuro Peppermint Focus Mints. The problem. There's a Whole Foods employee in a leadership position, who I've never had a conversation or even a greeting with, despite him always being around for the 3 years that I worked there. He created a case against me after he saw me there on August 26, using very defamatory language, such as stalking, creating this insane narrative throughout the whole location. And the thing about him doing this after I left my position 19 days earlier, is that he can now write anything he wants, with just his slant, his spin, painting me in a very negative light. With me not knowing it, and with me not being able to defend myself. That gives him a lot of leverage, in terms of manipulating the higher-ups at the location who don't know anything about me. I no longer work at the location, so I simply cannot defend myself. Whereas before I would be required to. I worked there for thousands of hours, non-stop interactions with hundreds of people, and everything was great. And then, after my time as an Amazon employee there ended on August 7 to when the issue started 19 days later, I shopped there as a customer for a total of around 1 combined hour. During that short period of time, I only had conversations with 2 people on the floor. 2 people that I know, Olivia and Amelia, for a total of around 15 minutes, and suddenly there's supposedly a huge issue. Statistically very fishy. So, a red flag. So again, keep that in mind. 2 people, short period of time. 2 people who I've talked with since the accusations started. And both of them have told me that nobody has talked with them about any issues, and that they have no idea what's going on. And the fact that this involves a short period of time just simplifies everything, making every step, every interaction that I had easy to remember. Since there's not much to remember. My interactions during the 19 days span. I'm going to list the days that I talked with Olivia and Amelia, as well as the things that we talked about, to have a better sense of the interactions. August 15, 2022. I went to Whole Foods. I talked with Olivia. We talked about the new floor at Whole Body, and she really got going about how much she dislikes it. That before it was ceramic, now it's just a sticker. It immediately gets dirty after it's cleaned, on and on. Very cool quick conversation with Olivia, really getting passionate in a sense, letting her frustration loose. August 23, 2022. I went to Whole Foods. I talked with Olivia. This was one of my best conversations ever with her. Probably second best. The back and forth was just great. We talked about the first time we interacted, how she walked me over for an item that was located by the self-checkout. The topic of reading body language came up, and that in particular is probably what made the conversation so great. Because if body language can be read and that concept is at the forefront, then it creates a sort of honest vibe of being yourself even more. It becomes even more free-flowing than normal. That's my theory regarding the conversation. And her blink rate was very low, and she seemed very comfortable. And like always, after a few minutes I ended the conversation, even though I wanted it to continue. I always keep it short and try to end it on a high note. I then saw Zayla, Olivia's supervisor, and I asked her about the Neuro Peppermint Focus Mints. She told me that they might have been discontinued, and if I was going to be there tomorrow, so that she could let me know. I gave her an instant no, because she's probably thinking that I still work there. And that instant no just ruined my night, because I was worried that it might have sounded rude. I felt like going back to her before I left and tell her. August 26, 2022, I saw Amelia, who probably unknown to the guy, also works for Amazon, in aisle number 4. I had been feeling down because for the transition I was transferred to a new location away from the people that I know. She gave me advice about the managers and what to do, and this was a great conversation. We talked about us having very good memories. We talked about her only wearing her face mask at Whole Foods, but not at Amazon. And many, many more things that I'm cutting out due to length. It was an amazing conversation. Very free-flowing, like it could just go on and on. Very engaging. I then went to Derry. There I saw Olivia, and I said hi to her. So even though she was there on this day, I did not talk with her. Which really doesn't go well with the stalking narrative. I then went back to Amelia, because I remembered something body language related and I wanted to ask her about it. Which is compressed lips. It's something that customers do a lot. When someone is in the way, they compress their lips, and that it means withholding. Like frustration. And how that's the most common cue from customers there at Whole Foods. So the question now is, if I was supposedly stalking someone on this day, then why is it that nobody talked with Amelia regarding me? Considering that she's the only person that I had a conversation with on the sales floor on this August 26, 2022. Small recap. This is rather long, and I've mentioned quite a few unknown people, strangers to the listeners, and a lot of different details. And unless one is familiar with the people and able to keep track of all the little details, then it all becomes a blur. And now I have to introduce 2 more important characters, which increases the complication for anyone listening. All of this makes it much harder to keep track of what's going on and increases the chances that they're just going to move on from this video to something else. So let me recap the previous. Within a 19-day span of being just strictly a customer at Whole Foods Brooklyn, I had conversations with only 2 people on the sales floor. Olivia, who I get along very well with and is also my favorite Whole Foods employee, and Amelia, who probably unknown to them, also works for Amazon. I live a few blocks away from this Whole Foods, but according to an employee there in a leadership position, whose name I don't even know, and who I never even had a greeting within the 3 years that I worked there, according to his genius assessment, I'm supposedly traveling from far, far away to stalk one of these 2 girls, and so he's going to get management and security involved. Does this guy think I'm like a Forrest Gump or something? It's disgusting, disgust emotion, the idea that I would waste very limited time during a day, waiting for the train to pull up, rush hour, the irritation, the annoyance, the waste of life, etc. And how mind-numbing it would be for me in particular with my low dopamine levels, just to go to Whole Foods for 7 minutes and then repeat the process to go back home. Talk about not knowing me at all. In the following section, I will introduce another two characters. The first one being Penelope, who is the Swiss Army knife of that Whole Foods location and deserves a raise. And the second one being the actual guy that's responsible for the whole situation. I also mentioned the tall guy Jimmy Pellegrino in the beginning, but he's not part of the controversy. Boo-boo facing because of my presence. August 26th continued. After I paid for my things, I saw Penelope by the staging area, as well as the tall guy who worked for Amazon at a different location. I had a longish conversation with the tall guy Jimmy Pellegrino. We talked about how to best deal with people who work with the public but would rather not lift a finger to help you. For example, I once broke my leg, 2 bones snapped in half. A few months later I crutched myself almost 2 miles for a doctor's appointment. And the person at the front desk was willing to send me back home and have me completely miss my appointment, rather than lift a finger to find out which way I have to go. And stuff like that is more common than not. It's always a factor that must be considered. Like when I sent this letter to the Whole Foods person named in my ban letter. The biggest obstacle is that this person is probably not going to lift a finger when he can just ignore it. It's a factor for all of us, and the only antidote to it is to have some sort of status. And then I needed to get the metal rod out of my leg, and because of the luck of the draw the orthopedic doctor in that day was so angry that the task landed on his watch that, out in the hall, he yelled at the assistant person to tell me that the computers are down. Come back another day. Jimmy Pellegrino gave me advice on that topic. Penelope. I then went over to Penelope, and this was a major point because the guy that I mentioned earlier, the one who started all of this, was there. Normally I stay away from that guy, simply because I sense that he has disdain for me. Which I don't mind. It's just a factor of life. And if you can tell that a person has disdain for you, it's always good to avoid them. It prevents any unforeseen spontaneous bad things. Case in point. The guy. On June 10, 2022, 1 week after I took Penelope's picture, I printed out one of the pictures that I took of her onto a shipping label sticker. It was very unique and cool looking, especially for her because she's not used to seeing actual images on a shipping label. It was a novelty. She said that it looked like a drawing. And she liked it so much that she called over the guy that I mentioned earlier, that's responsible for the whole situation. She calls him over, and in my head I'm like, oh no, because I know that guy doesn't like me, and I didn't want him to get annoyed. I know that he's not going to be happy about Penelope showing him, in an excited kind of manner, the sticker label printout that I created. She doesn't know that. Note, like most days, I was in as a customer on this day. After she showed him the shipping label sticker, he left, and I handed her my phone with the pictures, and I walked away. I wanted her to view them in private so that she wouldn't feel self-conscious or anything like that. I overthink things. At one point, she held out my phone to me and asked me if the current picture on the screen was the same one as the one on the shipping label. All this is viewable in the security footage for this day. So this was a good moment. Penelope seemed to like the pictures, even though she said she looked like a grandma with her glasses on. Kind of like this. But I'm very attentive to the moods of everyone in the room, and despite what a good moment June 10th was, after this day, the few times that I brought up the pictures with Penelope, there was something different. Like a sort of hesitation. A change that only I really would notice, being so attentive to people's moods and facial expressions. And I would describe it as, like when an employee secretly has an earpiece on, and a manager stops by to chat with them. If you can imagine, the focus of the employee is now on the headphones, and that will cause a difference to their normal self because cognitively, they are a little overloaded. They might smile a little more, but with a sort of worried expression. Not quite like that GIF. Too much focus, mental energy is going to one thing and thus affecting everything else. And this was only when talking about the pictures. Something was different from the moment that she excitedly showed the guy the sticker image, to the present. Maybe other people wouldn't have noticed it, but I notice such little differences because I'm so attentive to the mood of everyone in the room. And at the time I didn't know that the guy was so extreme, brazen and malicious, to the point of slandering me, considering that I've never talked to him in the, up to that point, almost 35 months working there, so I started thinking that Penelope just didn't like the pictures. I was convinced that she didn't like them. Back to August 26, 2022. So August 26 comes, and if you watch the video, I go over to Penelope after paying at the self-checkout. The guy is there, I'm very aware of him, I don't want to annoy him, but I might not see Penelope for a long time and so I wanted to give her the pictures. If you watch the video, with that guy being there was that hesitation from Penelope, big time. Something was up, with that guy being there. Again, I'm thinking that she hates the pictures, despite liking them on June 10th. Then after I finished talking with the tall guy, I go over to Penelope and give her the QR code. I believe she was alone at this point. Perhaps the guy who started all of this went to spy on me on the security tape. Because why is he here, if he doesn't work here anymore? Why is he here? I don't like it. Boo-boo face. After I gave Penelope the QR code, if you watch the security video, she gave me one of her typical, charismatic Penelope smiles, and this relief came over me, and I instantly smiled and said something like, if I had my camera, I would take a picture. And that was just a throwaway kind of comment. Like she was suddenly back to normal from the earlier hesitation, I don't know what else to call it, it was all of a sudden, the smile, and I didn't know what to say. Since the photos were the current topic, the throwaway comment related to them. And as my mind continued to search for something more to say, I see that she had a pink shirt on and I said something like, because you're wearing pink. I was basically improvising. I wonder if all of that could be heard on the security tape. The guy, I've never had a conversation with this guy, ever in my life. I've only had 2 customer interactions with him. The first one being in 2019, probably my first week there. He took care of me at customer service and was rude to me. He was rude, but I didn't take it personal, because again, I understand how tough the job is, which is the reason why I always go to the self-checkout. And I just thought, oh, he's straight, he likes girls and I'm a guy. I lowered his dopamine levels, where a pretty girl would have raised it. He's taking advantage of the fact that I no longer work there to immediately create a case against me, because in doing so under the current conditions, I won't know about it, nor be able to defend myself, while he stays squeaky clean in the background. Whereas in the past, I would have to know the allegations, who's making it, and be allowed to defend myself. Due process. My trips after the guy started spying and plotting against me. August 29, 2022, was I banned 2 months later due to this date? This also happens to be the day of the security picture in my trespass and ban letter, which was given to me in November. Over 2 months after this day. I looked so guilty of something in that screenshot. I had a massive headache. I was so tired and debilitated after doing a shift at Amazon, which is why I had the orange Amazon winter hat on, in August. For working in the freezer. Orange for safety. But it's one of those situations where even though I just want to die, due to having worked with a massive headache, on 2 hours sleep, if I don't go and buy food, then I can't eat and it's going to be a lot worse. I would love to talk more about the reason why I had this massive tension headache. On this day, I had to tell Olivia something very important. I saw her by one of the registers and I told her that I had to show her something important. She said sure. I wasn't prepared, so I looked for the something important on my phone. She said hold on, that she was coming right back. I then went to the middle aisle in whole body, crouched down and held my head, because it hurt so much. Again, I hope you have access to the footage to corroborate everything I've said. Ignored that last sentence, this was originally written to a person named in the banned letter, that one can write to so that he could ignore it. Eventually, I couldn't wait anymore, I was very much in distress in a public setting, and so I went to pay for my stuff at the self-checkout and then I left. I assumed that this day was looked at, considering the still image, so I wonder what the narrative for this day is. The narrative conceived and determined by a third person who is specifically looking at security tape from over 2 months ago, trying to spin and twist anything they can to try and get me banned. I wonder what their determined narrative is, considering that they didn't get any input from me, nor from Olivia. Note, Olivia told me that nobody has talked with her. They're probably using the fact that I was there crouching down, holding my head in distress at whole body as the reason to ban me, over 2 months after the fact. Make up some possible reasoning without any verification, because out of context me holding my head in a crouching position looks out of place. This sort of could look like something bad. Let's not investigate or even ask Olivia about it, we need something already, so let's just use this, it's the only thing we've got. Simple corruption. Quick summary for September. Since I mainly go to Whole Foods when I run out of milk, I started buying 3 cartons of milk, instead of 2. That way I could extend the time between trips. I talked with Amelia for about 2 minutes on September 6th in aisle 11. I still have only talked with only 2 different Whole Foods employees on the floor. Only 2 possible employees where anything bad could have happened. During this month of September, I only talked that one time with Amelia of Amazon. And like always, other than the day that I talked with Amelia, I'm in and out in 6 to 7 minutes. September 9th, 2022, I went to the self-checkout. Olivia was working there, but I did not talk to her because she was working. The guy who started this whole mess was sitting there, and this was the first time of him seeing me since that August 26th. And I suspect that he was heavily triggered by my presence on this day, because when I came back to shop a few days later the security people wanted to kick me out, asking if I still work there, and why am I there. Whereas before the security people were completely oblivious to my presence, after the guy saw me on September 9th, they memorized my face. Not because anything happened in the 7 minutes that I was in there, but because this guy got triggered again by my presence. He couldn't stand the fact that I was there. I was in there for 7 minutes. During my next visit, the security people who now memorized my face and were on the lookout for me, learned that I live a few blocks away. That I'm not commuting there from far away, spending 7 minutes in there every few days to stalk anyone. Leadership finally learned this. You would think that would be the end of this. But no, the narrative now changed from I'm stalking someone, to what the manager is going to tell me in a couple of days when she confronts me with 3 security people. Which is that I invaded Olivia's space. Huge red flag, triangular flag, the narrative changing, once they found out that I live 5 minutes away. The story changes, the narrative changes. Once they found out that I live 5 minutes away, they changed the narrative to I invaded Olivia's space. The confrontation from the manager. September 19th, 2022, I had to go pick up an Amazon package at Whole Foods, due to disappearing packages in the building where I live. Outside I get confronted by a manager who I've never seen before, with 3 security guards. From my point of view, this is insane. I'm here being confronted almost as if I was a criminal, and all because of one guy that works there, whose delusional judgment they are blindly following. Which is why I think that when somebody makes such allegations against a customer, at least 2 other people should separately verify the video footage. Not just trust one person and their possible delusional, possible emotional, possible low IQ judgment, just because that person is part of the family. And I'm not mentioning low IQ as a put down, but a factor that must be considered. She's risking a lot on the word of someone who, despite not knowing anything about me, has an insanely strong and irrational bias against me. She approached me with a smile, the same way that a person in her position would approach a customer, and within 10 seconds I told her that I worked there for thousands of hours with 0 issues. And then all of a sudden, I come here a few times, in and out as just a customer, and suddenly there's an issue. And immediately after I said that, her mood, facial expression, turned into a sort of death stare, for a lack of a better term. She said that it doesn't matter. And that's very fair and valid. Anything can always happen at any time. But I worked there for 3 years, and it smells of high shenanigans that suddenly there's an issue now that I'm just a customer coming in and out in less than 8 minutes. And now someone can create a case, say whatever they want about me, painting me in a very bad light, and I cannot know about it. Whereas a few weeks earlier, not only would I have to know what the problem is, but my side, my words would also have to be considered. Imagine a CEO who is running a Fortune 500 company. This person cannot know every little detail of everything that's going on related to the company, and as such they have people whom they pay a lot of money to keep the CEO up to date, to make sure that the CEO makes accurate decisions, a team of analysts and lawyers, because knowing the exact reality of a situation is basically life or death. As someone who cannot know everything that's going on related to the company, this CEO has to depend on this group of people. Now replace that team of analysts and lawyers with some random guy who's there not because of any special talent or ability, but just because he's been working there for a long time and has emotional issues and an agenda against the person that's being targeted. She brought up my camera, which I have not brought in during my time as just a customer. So after leaving the position on August 7th, there's no way for her to know about my camera. There has been no reason for my camera to be an issue as just a simple customer since I have not brought it in since my last day 43 days earlier. So why would it be an issue now for whoever started this issue, and not the few times that I did use it when I worked there? I even lost the camera once back in 2020 and leadership held it for me in a very professional and high priority fashion after it was found. I believe they even looked at the security camera to see who the camera belonged to. So why is my camera an issue now when I no longer work there and haven't even brought it in as just a customer? She's talking about something that does not exist in the timeline after I left the position. Is this another red flag? Triangular flag, January 6, 2023, yes. That's a huge red flag, triangular flag. If the guy who started all of this on August 26 had an issue with me taking Penelope's picture, like he did back in June when Penelope excitedly called him over to show him the shipping label sticker printout, then why wait 10 weeks later, when I no longer worked there, to create a fake case against me? She then started saying something about me bugging people to take pictures, so I tried to tell her that the first time that I used the camera at all this year was in May, in my personal life. And that 2 people took their pictures, including Penelope on June 3rd, and I barely worked there this whole year, especially in the summer, due to my skinniness. So who was I bugging to take pictures? She again says, it's a private company, they don't have to tell me. I'm just a customer. That's fair, it's a private company and I'm just a customer. But if this situation happened on August 7th, or any day before that, then they would have to tell me, and that's very fishy. Red flag, triangular flag. Again, my camera doesn't exist in the timeline after August 7th. And if I was bugging anyone before, which I wouldn't, due to specific personality traits and logic that I hold, if I was bugging anyone then leadership, including the guy, would have to do something about it, immediately. I would have to explain myself and there's no getting out of that. Ultimately, this is a discussion between 2 people. The type that happens millions of times per day around the world. So just imagine how obnoxious the world would be if half the people had an "it's a private company, I don't have to tell you" card for everything that might be inconvenient for them. Because ultimately that's what it is, a Whole Foods card that managers all around the country have probably used thousands of times, over and over again against customers. And then I voluntarily told her that I brought the camera on my last day, because it was my last day. I worked there for 3 years. I wouldn't have worked there that day if it wasn't the last day. It was an important day, and though I didn't get to take anyone's picture because it was so busy, this was probably going to be the last time that I ever saw certain people. And on that day, since I brought my camera, I asked Olivia if she wanted to take a picture. All voluntary information since there's nothing to hide. If you look at the security camera of my last day, I asked Olivia when she was cleaning a tall blue cart in the water section area. A very quick talk. She told me that she doesn't like to take pictures, and that was that. It was that simple. I continued on my way. She was the only person who I asked that day. And so that voluntary information became an issue with the manager. She told me photos are not allowed. I told her that I didn't know that. That's fine, I'm not going to use it. I didn't even use the camera at the Whole Foods, or anywhere else in the world, this year until May. And people take pictures with their phones all the time, so it's not very intuitive to know that the camera is not allowed. It's not something that I hid. The head security guard even took a picture back in January 2020, with my old camera. So how would anyone even know that they can't take pictures? If she doesn't want me to use the camera, that's perfectly fine. But the thing is that something that I rarely used is being used at the moment to cast some sort of doubt on me. Paint the picture that I'm up to no good, when I'm literally just buying food and trying to leave as soon as possible. Because now, this is a sort of internet-like argument where she has to justify the position of having to confront me. And now, since I voluntarily mentioned that on my last day I asked Olivia if she wanted to take a picture, she becomes an issue against me in this conversation. Simply based on the nature of the question of, do you want to take a picture? In total, I've asked Olivia twice if she wanted to take a picture, technically once, and out of all the hours that I've talked with her, those 2 times combined, add up to less than 15 seconds. The 2 times that I've asked Olivia to take a picture add up to less than 15 seconds. And one of those times it was just part of a joke, but I'm going to count it anyway. I asked her the one time during my last day there as an employee for Amazon. And the other time was essentially a joke, where we were talking and I said, one day you're going to quit and I'm never going to see you again. I should take your picture. A 5-second comment and I didn't even have my camera with me. Which led to her saying, I love my job. And I was so confused, asked her if she just said that she loves her job. She said yes. And then I said, you're only saying that because Zayla, her supervisor, is over there, and she might hear you. And then we proceeded to talk about how she loves her job. With the joke/comment lasting literally less than 5 seconds. The manager then talked about seeing me on camera doing something bad. But she can't tell me what it was, because it's a private company. There is not one bad thing that I've done. At all. The guy, being human, doesn't realize that. When creating his fake narrative, he did not factor in just how few people I talked to, my history with such people, and just how short the timeline of events is. The whole fake narrative just screams of middle grade school gossip, imagined, and being told as fact, because they don't like that new student over there. He also didn't factor in my memory of events. So I tried to tell her every step that I took on August 26th, the day that I talked with Amelia and gave Penelope her pictures. The beginning of the guy spying on me with the hopes of getting me banned. To see where anything went wrong. With the pressure of the manager putting a completely disinterested look as I talked. So I told her that if she looked at the cameras, she would see that I first went to produce, I got apples, bananas, I then went to bulk and got peanuts. I then was going to say that I started walking to whole body, saw Amelia in aisle number 4, continued on to whole body to see if they had these neuro peppermint focused mints that have been out of stock since early July, but the manager said something like, Stop right there. What did you do at whole body? What did you do at whole body? Basically saying that something happened there with someone. And I said, there was nobody there. There was nobody there. And then she said that I invaded somebody's space there. And my facial expression is that of confusion, especially since Olivia is the only person that I talk with at whole body, that's her department. And I only said hi to her by the milk section that August 26th, far away from whole body. Watch the videotape. Then the manager had enough and refused to talk to me. It's a private company, so she doesn't have to. As she started leaving, I asked her how long do they keep the security footage, because I don't want it to get deleted. That's basically my biggest concern. And she's like, it's a private company, she doesn't have to tell me. The continuous go-to line, which I assume is the standard Whole Foods go-to line nationwide during situations with customers. July 26, 2023, it's a private company, but they're just employees and should not get to play dictator. Like I said earlier, this involves a very short period of time in which I only talked with 2 different people on the floor. Olivia and Amelia. With Olivia being the person that works at whole body. And I've asked them both about this, and Olivia is so confused, and nobody has talked to her about this. As well as Amelia, nobody has talked to her about this. So how is that possible? How is it that I'm being accused of invading somebody's space, yet the only 2 people that I've talked with have not been talked to? Serious red flag, triangular flag. So that was it. The manager said that I was allowed to continue shopping there, just to not take any pictures. And she also told me that it's a private company, and they can refuse to essentially let me shop there. January 26, 2023, and how is it that I supposedly invaded Olivia's space, yet I'm not being banned for that on this day, and just told not to take pictures? Another red flag, triangular flag. She didn't want to listen to anything that I had to say, so as she was leaving, I asked her that if I send a letter detailing everything to corporate so that they could investigate, if she will read it. Because I want her to know my side, and defend myself, clear my name, but she wasn't interested in listening to me. She did say yes, but it was more of a she would have no choice. Coerced. Very annoyed. Note, then later that night she's going to vent her frustration on a hastily written company log that she has to write about regarding the confrontation. Continuing to further feed that fake narrative in a biased manner. With a pure negative slant about a complete and total stranger that she just met for the first time ever that night, which at least is more than the guy who started this whole thing. Olivia. Olivia is probably my favorite Whole Foods employee. We would chat most of the time we came across each other at Whole Body, and I saw that she wasn't too busy. She has always known that I live nearby, and I mostly communicated with her while in as a customer. Because again, I rarely worked there this year and so I came in mostly as a customer. July 30th, 2023, I just tried to think of an image that could relate to Olivia which I can add to this, and amazingly PewDiePie is what popped into mind. There seems to be a certain resemblance in the facial expression or mood of the two. Olivia is so approachable and easy to talk to because of her facial expression/mood. As a male, I've always been very respectful with her. I mentioned that I mostly communicate with her at whole body, and the reason for that is because I understand the potential optics with me being a boy and her being a girl. Whole body is her department, and I can just stand parallel to her as we chat with nothing looking out of the ordinary. If a coworker of hers appears, I end the conversation, simply because of the potential optics. For example, if we go back to August 23, 2022, I just had what was probably my second best conversation ever with her. The best one was 2 months earlier, in June. After that conversation, I went to the right of the aisle and she went to the left. I saw Zayla buy the Neurofocus mints, and I went to ask her the question about the peppermint being out of stock for almost 2 months. And at the same time Olivia unexpectedly appeared from the left side. And if you look at the video, despite how much Olivia and I talked seconds earlier, at that moment it was as if Olivia was a stranger to me. Because I'm conscious of the optics. And I'm sure she is too. It's automatic. Effortless. Not something that's sitting in my mind as we talk. Olivia is perhaps the smartest Whole Foods employee that I've met during my time there. She has a very honest way of thinking that most people lack. She's mentally honest, and to me that comes across in our conversations. If I were to invade her space, she's not going to ignore that, let it slide. Especially with her honest way of communicating with me. I've never hit on her, and I've never said anything boy-girl related to her. And if I did, our conversations would not last. Random note, keep in mind that most people, being human, are not well thought out and thus do not plan things out very well. So a plan of, he does live nearby, so let's just say that he invaded Olivia's space, does not go beyond that. So no consideration of my personality, at all since they don't know me, her personality, my possible history with her, how many conversations we've had, what we've talked about in our many conversations, and how it all adds up. And that list can just keep on going and going. It's very hard to fake reality. A vapid accusation is just not going to hold water, especially when it's entirely based on their imagination of an almost complete stranger to them. It's like, we'll make that accusation, we'll ban him, and that's it. No thought of any consequences, or that maybe I'll make my voice heard in other ways. Deciding not to contact Whole Foods corporate. After the confrontation from the manager, I googled how to contact Whole Foods, but I decided against it. Because despite that guy trying to screw me, in a very creepy, malicious way, I was certain that he would lose his job, and I didn't want to be responsible for that. I don't know if his issue is related to narcissism, or a teenage-like immaturity, or both. But I have a horrible life, he doesn't have to do any of this for me to get screwed. And most people have or will eventually have a horrible life, so I don't need to add to that just so that I could feel as though I got some sort of revenge. My guess is that I get along very well with many girls, and superficially it might look very positive for me. And that might cause resentment, due to imagination that's completely not reality. It's very difficult in this era to attract girls. If you go on the internet, there are a lot of angry guys. He might be imagining that I'm having it good, and determined that that's not acceptable to him. But he doesn't know how lame my life is. What a negative it's been, all for me to just die one day. And the decision of whether or not to complain to corporate was a huge deal, because time was of the essence. With my biggest and number one worry being that the security tape will eventually be deleted. I even Googled, how long do companies typically keep security footage before it gets overwritten? I was very happy to see that the still image used in my ban and trespass letter was from August 29th. Though very creepy, I hope that during the spying, that they printed out a list of all my credit card transactions, which is what I assume they did, and that they exported the video footage of all of my visits for those days. The out-of-nowhere ban, November 3, 2022. So I continued being a customer at the Whole Foods. Very awkward, nerve-wracking, always worried about what random, out-of-nowhere, absurd situation might come up. Because imagine this, the higher-ups at the location embraced the fake narrative of one of their employees, who without any shame, very irresponsibly created a case against me, saying that I was stalking a nameless person, because my position as an Amazon Whole Foods shopper ended 19 days earlier. And once they found out that I live a 5-minute walk away, they as a team changed their fake narrative to me invading the space of someone who I know and respect, without even talking to her. Once getting a weird look from one of the female security personnel, who was not involved during the manager confrontation. Wondering what negative things she might be thinking of me, since after all, the guy and the manager not only slandered my name, but gave them pictures of me to memorize. But then today, November 3rd, 2022, I had to go to Whole Foods, because I ran out of food. And while picking apples in the produce section, I was confronted by Michael, the shift leader, while surrounded by around 6 security people. This was a very humiliating event. Having them take away all of my items, including the Neuro Peppermint Focus Mints that were finally back in stock after 4 months, and on sale, being treated like a criminal. I'm being treated like a criminal when I've done absolutely nothing wrong. And in front of people being told by the shift leader, who has a sensitive ego issue, if we see you here 911 will be called and you will be arrested. He just yelled that out to me with glee, while I was 23 feet away, per Google Earth, walking away, and he was at the entrance. He was triggered. He was perfectly fine as they were walking me out of the store. A serene facial expression, I thought. I started to tell him the whole thing about working there for 3,000 hours, 1 hour as a customer, blah, blah. But soon realized that he didn't seem to care. Which is an accepted reality for me. So I gave up mid-sentence and said, "Ah, you don't care," as I turned forward to continue walking out. Nothing bad at all from me, just a realization and moving on. But that seemed to trigger him. And I can relate to that, because I go from okay to pure anger in a split second if I feel that another guy is challenging me. It's my body chemistry. And it has its benefits, especially when it comes to defense. But I have too much self-control, still sensitive to the moods of others, reason, sense of fairness still intact, and so I don't turn into a dick. Seeing his personality, it would be very easy for anyone to piss him off. Just writing/saying that would be enough. Just questioning him would be enough. Question his authority. It's almost like a prank show. You're minding your own business, and then you get confronted and banned for no reason. It's just completely insane. Put yourself in my shoes. The whole situation is literally the same confusion as the person reading this would have if this happened to them after going to a random store. Because I'm simply going through the motions just like any other customer, and then suddenly, I'm getting accused of stalking someone, and once it's established that I live minutes away, I then immediately get accused of invading the space of someone that I know and would tell me if I was invading their space. The disdain from these people makes me wonder what else the guy, who started this whole thing on a delusion, might be saying about me without me being able to defend myself. I scanned the letter immediately after I got home and then destroyed it. Simply because I didn't want to risk dying and then having family members finding such a letter that makes me out to look like a criminal. The envelope had a bloodish-looking stain. It was kind of nasty. Back to the guy. From what I'm seeing of this person, whose name I don't even know, is that he has very self-focused logic. And thus, he accepted his delusion that I wasted time and money that I don't have, taking the horrible train and bus, to go to Whole Foods for 7 minutes, and then repeat the process to go back home. All in order to stalk a nameless person. Completely unable to consider any other possibilities, he accepts his delusion as a fact, to the point that he's willing to get everyone involved, including the manager and the security personnel, without even considering the possibility that there might be a reason as to why I go grocery shopping there. He cannot even begin to think of any other possible reasons as to why I'm there, or even think of investigating by asking the people who know me. To me, that's a great clue as to his IQ, as well as his character as a person. He's very limited and very narrow-minded. And that's not a put down, that's what I'm seeing based on my assessment of his whole behavior. Many Amazon shoppers lived nearby, with this being a good way to make extra money, but he couldn't consider that. Without having the capacity to consider much, he's able to assume that he's 100% right and thus get management and security involved. He's been there for years, they all get along, so management is just going to trust him. He's delegating for them, he's in charge of the task, and they don't realize that he's defective, delusional, doesn't have the capacity to consider different facts and put them all together, and accurately judge things, so they proceed with his fake narrative and manipulation of the events. That's all driven by a great dislike of me. It was just so cringy, back on September 19th, seeing that the manager confronted me with 3 security people, knowing that this is all based on the delusion of a narrow-minded personality. The manager was passively relying on the word and judgment of a mentally, and probably emotionally defective person, who probably has guy/girl issues. What else could it be? I got along particularly well with a lot of attractive girls. At the sign of no trouble, he decided to start looking at security tape to spy on me, after I gave Penelope her pictures. Again, why didn't he do that at the sign of no trouble back on June 10th when I showed and gave Penelope a printout of one of the same pictures? Again, why? If I gave Penelope a picture when I worked there, why didn't he start a case against me right then and there? Yet when I wasn't working there any longer and I gave Penelope the pictures, he creates a case against me. Think about that. He also seems to have narcissistic traits. I worked in that Whole Foods for 3 years. Many of the people there know my personality. They know me, they know my traits, they know my essence. But this guy who doesn't know anything about me, proceeds forward without ever considering those people and how that would look to them. For example, I wouldn't be able to do what he did because I'm going to consider the unknown history to me that he's going to have with so many people there, and how that might make me, someone who doesn't know him, come across. I'm going to also assume that they might think that I'm jealous of him. And so the only way that I could proceed is if I was a very selfish, self-focused person who only considers what I think and thus assume that my word is pure gold to whoever I speak it to. My theory is that from his point of view, his word must be correct, and thus trumps whatever positive feelings that others might have of me, allowing him to proceed with the first and only delusion that pops into his mind, while incapable of considering alternative possibilities, and without any worry of being wrong. From his point of view, they're simply going to believe him, because if it popped in his head, then it must be 100% truth. Since he only considers his points of views when he whines to others, to him his words equal absolute truth, persuasion and acceptance. He was spying on me, and he was so narrow-minded about me commuting over there that I wondered if he got a hold of my old address from 2020. Because why would he be so convinced that I'm commuting over there? How could a person be so one-minded? The stalking allegations also show some major projection. Not because he himself is or would be a stalker, but because of the idea that I'm going to be so hung up on a particular girl to the point where I'm going to travel from far away to shop at the Whole Foods. Considering everything, is this guy capable of killing me? As an Amazon employee, I worked in that location for 3 years, spent thousands of hours in there. I never had a conversation or anything with that guy. Who would have thought that during all this time, that person that's always sitting over there had tremendous issues with me? To the point that seeing me now as a customer when I don't work there, has caused this meltdown from him. It's very creepy. This whole effort is very extreme. This is showing some very extreme personality traits. For a person to do this to another person that they've never interacted with is very extreme. Plotting against a person that they don't know, to punish them. All due to whatever is going on in his imagination. That's very criminal-like. And I've texted people about this, which can be verified, as well as written about it in an internet forum after the manager confrontation, telling them that I don't know what this guy is capable of. That I'm willing to give the managers at Whole Foods my address so that they can verify it, so long as this guy doesn't find out where I live. Because only criminal types are this extreme and petty. This is extreme behavior, and he might be willing to kill me. That's a serious consideration that I've mentioned to other people based on his behavior. And for like a week I even made sure to be aware of my surroundings when coming in and out of the building where I live. It's one of the reasons as to why I ultimately chose not to contact corporate after the manager confronted me, because if this guy is this petty and extreme, if he loses his job over me, then he might be willing to kill me. It's really that simple. All you have to do is open up a newspaper to see just how many nuts there are out there and what a major part of human society they are. February 23, 2023, more on people are petty. People are petty. When given the chance, they will take advantage and do bad things. And 2 images popped into my head today, February 23, 2023. In 2015, there was a woman who was being beaten to death by a mob. And I remember seeing, in the video, this one guy in the surrounding crowd that was building up. He looked like a harmless guy, and I imagined him being horrified over what was happening. These are split-second thoughts. And then, he started kicking the woman. Very delighted over the opportunity of joining a mob that's beating a woman to death. The other is an image from 1941 Lviv pogroms. Imagine being dragged out of your house into that situation. The public was encouraged, and those young boys were very excited to take advantage of the situation. Many such people walk among us. The end. If you found this video interesting, like and subscribe.